Anyway, the reason why I brought up the similarity of a form of narrative that like eerily portrays the same stories that we've heard around our existence, right? So other stories that tell a similar narrative, we're like, that's freakishly similar, and that's freakishly, mysteriously so similar and identical to the truth that I'm, quote unquote, creatively unraveling, discovering. And so if ego was to, if a form of ego, right, if any one of us, we go and get in touch with whoever wrote that story, whoever sent that story out, the originator, find that source, whether it be an author or director or whatever, writer, right? So find that writer, find that creative individual, and go have a conversation with that creative individual about these particular storylines. And the storyline is being that in whatever weird, mystical shape or form, these truths exist. And in order to access them, we have to do all these crazy things and go on these crazy adventures. But really, all of those fictional stories are just ways to communicate actual truths, like actually. But in order to manifest them as the story portrays, we instead we have to let go of this existence. We have to evolve. We have to now exit the classroom and go off and find our own adventure. In my case, in my example, but I think we first need to find our friends, because when we find our friends have momentarily left the classroom as well. And when we find each other, we are confirming to each other that we're all in a similar kind of transitionary period outside of class. And we're like, why are you here? What? I was growing too old for this shit. And I, whatever, find an excuse to dip out of class, dip out of a school, whatever. And that represents teenage years as opposed to being a more ignorant and belligerent little child that needs to stay in school. So now that we think that we know better and we're legitimized in thinking that this is the correct course, we need to go out and discover our own truths as a higher form. And so these stories that we try and communicate back to us, ego, when we are now sober again and we're now ego again, this is our experience again. The stories that we take away, that's our trail back. So we need to shift ourselves into a higher state, follow these storylines, better understand the actual narratives, the forms of communication that creativity, inspiration, that ways that high is trying to communicate to us. So because stories work so well for us in our infantile state, stories are what Hai tries to use. And creativity, inspiration, these can also be symbolized as entities that Hai uses to try and help us write a story in order for us to keep reliving it and tune into it and follow it and realize more truths in order to grow up, in order to evolve. So yeah, that's this like magically crazy idea that I've had, that notion that if I was to start unraveling all of these kind of ideas for myself, but I'm constantly, I'm inspired by the forms of story that's come to these other individuals, these other forms of ego, right? That they surely probably tuned in, were somehow able to access forms of higher frequency, forms of higher information, whether momentarily, randomly, through a genie, as Elizabeth Gilbert says in her TED talk about creativity and genius, and that genius was from a form of almost like a little creature, like a deity, like a little sprite or a house gnome, however you want to visualize it. She was saying that was kind of boiled down to be understood and represented as genie. So it was seen as an external form, a little creature that was able to creatively inspire the person in question. The person in question can be a form of ego, so like a human being here, a sober human being. And so if you see creativity and inspiration, I think inspiration was the name of the god of creativity, of nature, maybe. Inspiration, I think, was a form in the Stormlight Archive. An entity. See, this is why the stories are so similar, because they might take different names, but the stories all kind of follow a certain path, a certain kind of path that tell a certain kind of story, and it's freakishly very similar. So I think all of our stories lead to the same kind of place of enlightenment, of evolution, just of transformation. We just need to grow up and all try and reach those kind of truths through stories, because stories work for us. So whatever story feels like it's getting to a truth, like a higher truth, remember, you've got to be tuned in to a higher frequency in order to follow these storylines of truth, not a twisted, manifested, low frequency state of conspiracy and of panic, of I mean, conspiracy, that's weird. Conspiracy. I'd have to think on that, what conspiracy means. I know what it means, but what it represents in the bigger picture. Is conspiracy another form like inspiration? because conspiracy is a form of paranoia as well. It's linked to. It's not one and the same. Definitely not, but it's perceived to be one and the same. It's a bad connotation. It's like bad juju, no one wants it around. It's a bit of a chaotic character. And so, wow, where am I even going with this? Because I feel like when I ramble, I tell an actual story that I don't even know about. I'm in tune with it and I'm just rambling on. But then as soon as I try to rationalize it, it crumbles and it's not manifesting. It stops manifesting. Because I'm tuning out. Because I'm trying to analyze it. And so I'm using a lower frequency of understanding, of decrypting. That's the thing. Maybe that's one of the things. That when we try to do it in a sober and lower frequency state, such as ego's default state, our powers, our abilities to decrypt higher forms of information, or higher's forms of information, we can't, because we're using our toys again. We're trying to manifest things in this frequency. We're trying to live and hold on to this experience, and it's limited. And so we can't carry on using our confident and pretentious, a bit arrogant assumptions that our forms, the way that we analyze and decrypt information and perceive it and manifest it and control it, we think that these ways are the way, are the best way. It's our way. It works for us. We made it. But it's so limited. It's just, it's a toy that ego created. It's a mechanism that ego created to try and develop and understand. It's all good, but it's crap. And it's incapable of understanding deeper truths. Because we can't use toys for what's coming, for what's possibly just beyond our reach. We need to let go of a lot of things. And so, yeah, ego doesn't want to let go and grow up. I keep being reminded of this kind of narrative every time I'm in a higher frequency. In other words, high on a substance that tunes me into a higher frequency. Okay, so make a note to try and contact Brandon Sanderson and other authors. The King Killer Chronicles. I think that's another series of books, of novels. Works of fiction, all of these creative works of fiction, honestly, if they all have a storyline that sounds very similar to this kind of thing, it's worth contacting the authors, the writers, and having a conversation specifically about these narratives actually being true and what their experiences have been like. Because these works of fiction are somewhat not fiction. Because they're just stories that work for us, but they're based on communicating and transferring actual truthful information of other forms of reality and existence and possibility that we could evolve into, that we could experience. It's hinting at the higher truths of actual possibility, right? And we could experience them, we could evolve, but we need to follow those stories that work for us, because that's the stage we're in. That's the stage of manifested consciousness we're in. And it helps to give all forms of understanding, all kind of categories and things like that, all of these forms of how we remember information, how we decrypt it, all of these tools, structures, we can give them names. And so, yeah, the name that I'm giving for this kind of storyline, you learn to understand. And this whole thing could be a big story that I'm writing. But I don't have the patience to write things by hand or type them out on a computer. As thoughts come to me from being, I guess, in a higher state, these stories of truths, I need to quickly and efficiently get them down, record them, so that I can pick through them and get closer to the golden nuggets of truth. And story works for me. Obviously, actually acknowledging about this kind of thing, that stories work for us, and that the concept of we being ego, this little child trying to grow up into another evolved state, similar, characterized to being like a teenager, all of this kind of make-believe. What if all of this is synchronized? What if all of this is all of the same, all in the same, one and the same? So that'll be curious. Because if I was to go up to the author like Brandon Sanderson and was able to have a direct line of communication to him and ask him directly about these kind of narratives and his experience with them being a creative, inspired thing, and if he denies the possibility that they are forms of truths that comes to him while he possibly is in a higher state, because that's, I think, that's probably the most common. Like getting high off of weed is a common way to open that portal to a higher state. I mean, there are lots of different higher frequencies, but they will manifest you into something maybe ugly. And depending on how we use those substances, it can manifest to an undesirable outcome. So it's dangerous. I think ego is but a child trying to dabble with things that they don't understand, and they can get damaged. But it doesn't mean that that portal, that not portal, but that means, yeah, that it doesn't mean that means is really bad for it. Not necessarily. It's just they don't know how to work with it. Anyway, what was I saying? Classic. Yeah. If Brandon Sanderson denied that this is like eerily true somehow, and that it's worth exploring in a very, very, obviously, as all of this, deeply fantastical and philosophical and exploratory way of thinking. But yeah, this all works for me. Making voice notes, recording my voice so that it automatically transcribes. This works for me. So I'll continue to do this. And if it turns into an actual book in order to further communicate a similar story that I am just unraveling as I go, it would be amazing. I think I would probably want to edit a lot, but I'll use AI and like book checkers, to proofreaders rather, to do that. But yeah, I might actually be writing a book right now. That's crazy. That's awesome. Could it work? Could this actually work like this? Or audiobook, I mean, that would probably be more ideal. As a better form of communication, it's got to be audio as opposed to written word. The transcription is great for captions, but to convey tone, gravitas, higher, like more forms of communication can be absorbed through audio rather than written word. So yeah, if this was to become a book of sorts, or like a gigantic series, a podcast, it can be broken up into different content. Hell, why don't I just do that? Why don't I just start? Well, podcast is a pain in the ass, because if it's a video podcast on YouTube to try and get monetized in order to get that passive line of income, that's a whole different thing. The visual aspect, it involves other people. People don't want to pay attention to just a talking head the whole time. I would want to get guests in and have a talking podcast, higher talks. I would want to do that, which will hold me back. But things can be done super quickly if you just trust and follow in the higher talks, in the higher ways of thinking. So just follow that course. Whatever comes to you, just like this, rambling on, it's a stream of consciousness, but it's a stream of higher consciousness. Well, sometimes I can dip in and out of trying to analyze it in ego form and then tuning back into higher form. This is wonderful. If I was to actually start gaining some passive income through this, and also at the same time, like win-win situation, help get the information out there, tell my story, get people connecting with me and saying, yeah, this is crazy, but I've had a very similar way of thinking. And I didn't think of it like that. The story that I had was different. It had different names and different characters and different metaphors. But when I hear the two stories side by side, holy shit, like they're so on point. And we must now automatically be friends because there's something here. And so we need to hang out, and we're now best friends, and we're going to go on this journey of discovery together. Oh, shits and gigs. Oh my God, those two are like the reason one of the many reasons why I'm drawn to shits and gigs is because the camaraderie, man. Like those two are like bros. They have like a bromance and brohood that I wish I had. I resonate with that so badly. Because I know what it's like to have like close bros, but to do a poddy and to make bags, to connect with them in so much that I'm sponging their mannerisms. I am sponging the way that they speak, the language they use. Like there's like bad man and man said this and chirps and lips and bags. I'm picking up all these all this lingo, and I am loving it, and they resonate with me. That they're not quite telling stories like I am and will be am. Wow. they're doing a podcast in the more like, ego sense. They're masters of their manifestations, right? They're killing it with getting huge channel growth and whatever platform. They're getting so cocky with it, and I fucking love it. I love it. They're getting so they'll start off on YouTube and then they'll branch off into like getting Patreon and or whichever came first. I don't know the deep history, but they've got Patreon and YouTube working side by side. They got Discord for their family, and they're creating like a cult. They've got cult babies. They've got cult leaders. They're doing big things. They're doing big things. And they're making moves, and they're influencing people, and they're connecting with an audience, their family. They're connecting with like friends who are all vibing on their level. And it's absolutely awesome. It's uniting people on a basis of, I like to laugh. I like to listen to banter. I like sharing stories that I got up to in my youth. I like sharing in other people's stories that they're getting up to now. I love the mannerisms. I'm addicted to that kind of teenage state where school is a playground of drama. And you are sucked in, and you're playing games, and you're getting up to shit, and you're just being mischievous, and you're loving it, and it's all fun, fun, fun. It's all love, 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 and fun, 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 gang, gang, gang. I mean, that's what they mean to me. That's what they encapsulate. And I don't know how exactly they do that, but that's what they communicate to me. I see that, I hear that, I want to feel that. So it's like another form of story. They, in real time, in this form of existence, in this reality, okay, in this experience, they are representing this like journey. If you tag along to it, whatever resonates with you, whatever story and like thing speaks to you the most, just vibe with that, stick with that, connect with others and other forms of stories that feel in the same like high, good way. And, whatever makes you feel good, as long as it's not too imminently dangerous, whatever. But like these narratives of truth, these stories of discovery, self-discovery and external outer discovery, but inner discovery, I think that's way more curious and way more like, meaty. You want to get into that. It's juicy, as they say. It's juicy. You want to get into that. You want to understand ourselves. You want to understand other people. And that's how we connect. That's how we gain friendship. That's how we gain develop bonds. That's how we better understand each other. And it all points to unity. It all points to just another step in our consciousness journey in order to grow up and become better individuals, right? Better manifestations. Okay, so our more evolved form in the future could have arisen from following the path of love and connection and bonds and peace, unity, coexistence, understanding that ego is what it is, what I've described. And once we understand that, once we're able to tune out of that, allow ourselves to reharmonize with a higher frequency, let that be our default, ride that harmony as a form of transition, of evolution. And then we'll see much higher forms after that. We'll see what the next step is. But I mean, that's an exciting journey. And if I was to find some people who think along these lines too, holy shit, like let's transform this world, man. Let's do it. Let's transform this frickin' existence. For me, for you, for all our egos, right? Let's do it. Let's tell this story if it helps everyone to evolve and to tune in and to merge with our higher selves. Merge with whatever higher frequency works for you. Let's do it. Let's create a pod. Me. Oh shit, me. Just me. But I'm scared. I know it sounds like I'm listening to a voice that you can't hear. But honestly, it's silence. Honestly, it's silence when I have the pauses. Because the thoughts don't form straight away. The thoughts, this is weird. It's just live talk, live stream of consciousness. The thoughts don't form as a thought. Well, the truths don't form as a thought. What am I even saying? The truths kind of tease as we talk. It's like it's like a buffer. It's like we're computers and we have to just download a file from a higher source. We have to click access and then download a file, and then we have to wait. There's a buffer before it arrives. It's because we're so unsophisticated. We don't have broadband. We don't have Wi-Fi. we have to use like primitive forms to just like tune in like a radio frequency from a great distance. We have to use these old tools that we've manifested in order to try and get glimpses of the truth. All right. Am I doing this pod or not? Okay. I've been talking for half an hour. That's crazy. What am I doing then? All right, let me have a think. And am I doing an audio like podcast just for myself straight away? Am I getting this information out there before I think about it? Am I gonna bollocks? I think this is one of the difficulties. This is one of the difficulties of ego. Well, of my ego anyway, certainly. I'm resisting the actual action to put myself out there, to admit that I'm giving in to some advice from a higher source, throw caution to the wind, pull your dick out, walk out in public. That's what it feels like. If I think about doing some kind of podcast by myself and sounding foolish, I don't want to sound foolish. I want to stay in this comfortable ego state where I get to manifest myself and portray myself as, as a sane individual without judgment, without preconceptions and we don't want to get a bad reputation, so we fall in line. We play the social rules. We learn the etiquette. We learn the behaviors. We stay in line because we don't want to step out and be laughed at. But that kind of danger, that kind of vulnerability, as long as it's this kind of higher frequency where the truths are actually the things that's going to set us free, if we were to just lean into it and surrender with hope, with faith, honestly, maybe that's one of the things about the religious texts, the Bible, the Quran, the whatever. Maybe they're also forms of communication left down from a higher source that's been taken over, confiscated. It's been confiscated by ego. Holy crap. Original text, could they have been confiscated by ego, by man, and then bastardized and just shaped to benefit ego's preferences of dominance, of control? Ugh, that's whatever, that's another story. Right, what was I getting hyped about? Right, should I lean into this? If what I'm talking about is actually true, should I put my money where my mouth is? Should I put my actions, make them speak louder than my words? And the action is get vulnerable, be open, lean into it, start a podcast and get content out there and just see if I get traction, you know? Whatever. If I don't, it's at least putting my stuff out there, making a step to surrender, to being open. I guess I'll still be cautious, like the ego state demands. I'll be cautious about being overcommittal into the unknown, because yes, in this form there are risks, there are ways to spiral down, and it will become unfavorable of an experience in this ego form world reality. All right, let me let me think about it. Shit, thinking is of ego. Analyzing is of ego. Shit, I should change that form, that perspective. Not let me think about it, not let me go away and think about it. No. I need to say it because I'm going to do it in a different way. Not think about it. It's got to be like, let me dwell on it. Let me dwell on that. That's with limited language, again, ego thing of tool of communication, limited. Yeah, I won't say think, I'll say dwell. That's as close as I can think of.